Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're doing more sports predictions. Of course, it looks a little different today. So, if you can't already tell, allow me to explain it. I am starting with the West in the NBA, and we're going to predict our way from 15 to 1, and then we'll move on to the East. So, let's get started. In 15th, I have the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are just a team that I think is really young right now and doesn't really have the cohesion or the experience to be a serious threat in this division that I think is going to be the best division or conference or however you want to say it in the NBA. I think Utah is mostly just Lauri Markkanen and a couple of guys that might be something eventually. Walker Kessler, of course, had that great rookie year and then declined his second year, and Keontae George is a guy to watch, but there is a lot of things that need to come together for Utah that I just don't think are quite there yet. And then in 14th place, I will put the Portland Trailblazers for a very similar reason. They're just not there yet. They're also a very young team. They have a lot of pieces that could be interesting. They have Scoot Henderson, I believe, is on this team. If I'm remembering correctly, it might be another guy, but yeah, this team is pretty young. I know they traded recently for Denny Avadia, I think is his name, to try and get some veterans in there and be competitive. But I think Portland is still a couple of years away from seriously competing in the West. And then this is where it starts to get a bit trickier, because all of the teams left down here are teams that I think could have some serious promise and at least make the play-in. So this is where we have to kind of get a bit hypercritical. So that's why I'm putting the LA Clippers at 13. For kind of the opposite reason as Utah and Portland, where this team is just old. They lost Paul George, and they lost Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook, I think, was kind of an underrated contributor to the Clippers last year. So losing both of those players, I think, is really going to hurt their ability to maintain a competitive atmosphere. And, Kawhi Leonard isn't getting any younger. James Harden isn't getting any younger. How long realistically can the Clippers keep up in the West? I don't think it's that long. And then after that, I'm going to put the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets, I think, are kind of an under-the-radar team. I think they definitely could be a play-in team, but I think they might be a year away or two. So for now, I'm leaning on the side of them being outside of the plan, outside of the playoffs. But I think they are definitely on the rise, and that is also true for the next team I'm going to put in here, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. Of course, the San Antonio Spurs recently acquired Chris Paul, and they got another guy, but I can't think what his name is off the top of my head. But they're building, they're trying, and I think they're closer than people might expect to being a play-in candidate, and they may very well make the play-in this year. I think it's definitely possible. But for right now, this early on, this is where I'm going to leave them. And then my first team in the play-in itself is going to be the Phoenix Suns. They were in the playoffs last year, I believe, as the 6th seed, I think. Of course, they lost 4-0 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I think, as they stand right now, Defensively, they're terrible, but I think they are certainly good enough to, at the very minimum, make the play-in. But I don't think they're better than the other teams that are also waiting to be ranked. I think this might be their last or second to last year of serious contention. But of course, I could be proven wrong at any moment. So the second team I would like to add to the play-in is the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans also made the playoffs last year as a play-in seed. I think they were the 8th seed, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, Zion got hurt in Game 1 against the Lakers that they ended up losing. I believe I'm remembering that correctly. So they had no Zion going into the playoffs. And eventually they lost, but if this team is healthy, I think it can be a very scary team. It's just a matter of, do I trust them to be healthy for the full year when history has shown otherwise? Not particularly. So for the time being, I will put New Orleans at 9th. At the 8th seed, I'm going to put the LA Lakers. I think their fall off has been pretty over exaggerated. I don't think you can count out LeBron and AD, even when I question if they're going to stay and play a significant number of games. Of course, last year, AD, I believe, broke his personal record for games played in a season. And I think that's a major part of why they made the play-in in the first place, because without AD, the Lakers are a much worse team, so if they can keep that going, I do believe they will be a play-in seed again this year. And this is where the West just gets so tough. Between like 1 through 8, I think we could seriously consider any of those to be finals hopefuls, because the West is so talented and so stacked, and the West is a very competitive division, so anyone from here on out could possibly be playoff. This could be finals favorites at some point this year. So in the 7th spot, I'm putting the Golden State Warriors. And of course, I'm putting them there for the same reason as the Lakers. I think their fall off is massively over-exaggerated until we are proven otherwise that Curry no longer has it. So for the time being, I'm leaving them in 7th, and I feel pretty good about that. They do have some younger guys that I'm very interested in seeing, and the Lakers do too. I forgot to mention Dalton Connect, who I'm very excited to watch. Of course, they also drafted Bronny James, but I don't really care. Yes, it's a cool story, but I don't think Bronny James is a very good player, so whatever he does is just a bonus, I guess. But the Warriors have Kevon Looney and Jonathan Kuminga, I think, right? They still have Jonathan Kuminga. Do they? Hold on. They may have traded Jonathan Kuminga. But they have Kevon Looney, they have that other center that's really young. They have Moses Moody. They have, what's that other guy? He's forward. I can't think of his name all of a sudden, but there are young players on Golden State that I think could really step up this year, that I'm very excited to watch. So Golden State is currently my 7th seed. In my 6th seed, I'm going to place the Memphis Grizzlies. I think a lot of people have them rated very highly, at least from what I have seen, but I worry about the defensive potential of that team without Steven Adams there. Their rebounding also kind of concerns me a little bit. So they're, on paper at least, they should be a very good team with Desmond Bane and Ja Morant and a couple of other guys, but I think they are limited compared to some of the guys at the top, but they are definitely a team to watch out for in the future. So maybe a couple months from now, we'll talk about it again, and I'll be proven disastrously wrong. And then at the 5 seed, this may come as a surprise to some other people. I'm putting the Denver Nuggets in the 5th position, and I'm putting the Denver Nuggets there because everything that I've read about the Denver Nuggets going into this season is that the front office is concerned about lack of development from some of their younger players and maybe a bit of regression from some of their previous key pieces to the core. So I don't want to count them out, of course, because it is the Nuggets and it is Nikola Jokic, and you know, how are you ever going to count that out, because he is the best player in basketball right now, and they do have a good supporting group around him, but it could be a possibility that they start to decline. So that is my 5th seed. In the 4th seed, I am placing the Sacramento Kings. Now, the Sacramento Kings could be a shock to some of you that they are so high on this list, but when I really sat down and I thought about it, I really do like this team. They have De'Aaron Fox, they have, what's his name that just came over from Chicago, DeMar DeRozan. They have that one guy that was also runner-up for 6-man, Malik Monk is his name. And I know there's another guy that I'm forgetting. Domantas Sabonis, right? That's his name. I think the Kings are going to be very good. I think they're going to shock some people this year. And that's why they're in 4th. So let's get to the meat and potatoes. The 1 through 3 seed in the West. I think this is much more difficult than the East is going to be, especially because I could see the Kings in the 3rd place. I could see the Nuggets in 3rd. You could maybe convince me of the Grizzlies even being in 3rd place. But let's take a look at these 3 teams here, and let's find out where. Excuse me. Let's find out where these 3 teams are going to end up. So, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Dallas Mavericks. The only one of these teams that wasn't top 3 last year, I believe, was Dallas. I think they were the 5th seed. They were 5th or 4th, but Minnesota and OKC were 1 and 2, if I remember correctly, or 1 and 3, one of the 2. But Oklahoma City, I'm putting back at the top spot. I don't think there's any real doubt about that this year. They, goodness. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I yawned there, but the Oklahoma City Thunder went and acquired a couple more pieces in the offseason that should make their team much better. They got Isaiah Hartenstein. They got, who's the other guy? They got Alex Caruso. And then there was like a 3rd piece that they also went and got, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But the point is, the Oklahoma City want to compete and they want to do it now. I believe Chet Holmgren will really step up this year. Obviously, they have SGA, who's a great player, and he's a rising star in the NBA, so I don't think you can count out OKC. Oh, this is a lot like my older videos. I am so sorry, but let's power through. In the 2nd position, I have the Dallas Mavericks. I think there are definitely issues with Dallas that got exploited in the finals last year, but I think that there was also just an element of them not playing to their strength, and I think they will do that this year. Of course, they went and got Klay Thompson. How much of a role is he really going to play? I don't know. But I think the Mavericks quite easily are a top 3 seed in the West. And then number 3, of course, is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, this could also be one that's up for debate because they traded Karl Anthony Towns, which was a huge part of their identity last year. Of course, they brought in Julius Randle, they brought in Donne DiVincenzo, but how much does that really, replace a guy like Karl Anthony Towns? Because there is only one Karl Anthony Towns. There is no other player that plays the way that he does, that gives you the volume scoring that he does, at the size that he is, stretches the floor the way he is. Yes, defensively, he was on the weaker side of things, but he did improve last year. We'll have to see. So, this is my final prediction for the West, and now we can move east. Hold on a second. There we go. Oh, that's still the West. There's the East. Apologies. Now, the East, I think, gets a little bit easier than the West, especially with the top 3 and the bottom of the list as well. So we're going to start fast and loose. We're going to put Brooklyn in the 15th spot. Brooklyn's in a rebuilding year. They traded a good number of their assets. Of course, Cam Thomas is still there, and he's still young, but there is really nothing in Brooklyn to look forward to. And the same is true about the 14th spot, the Chicago Bulls. There are a couple of guys in Chicago. One of the Thompson twins, I believe, is there. Or no, I'm sorry. The Thompson twin is in Detroit. That's right. But they do have one rookie that I know was supposed to be really good. And I believe they also had the first pick and took Alex Sarr, if I remember correctly. So there are pieces there, but kind of like Utah and Portland, I just don't see them being anything serious for a while yet. And the same is also true for Washington. Washington is a team that I think is just really young. They're really kind of cycling players right now. And I just don't believe that Washington is a very competitive team at the moment. So these 3, I think, are definitely worse than the bottom 3 in the West. They're probably going to be in the lottery again this year. We'll have to see, of course, but I don't trust them until I'm proven otherwise. Now, this is where it gets just the slightest bit more difficult. I'm going to put the Detroit Pistons. What is this? 15, 14, 13, 12. Detroit Pistons at 12. They are kind of in this same year, but Cade Cunningham and I don't remember if it's Amen Thompson or Ausar Thompson, but I think Detroit is just slightly ahead of these other 3 franchises in their rebuild and becoming a competitive team. Of course, they are still very young, but I could be convinced of them making the play-in. Of course, I think Chicago also made the play-in last year as a 10 seed, so anything is possible, but for now, I'm going to leave these 4 teams down here. At 11, I believe Toronto makes the most sense. Toronto's another team that's just kind of hanging there, not really competitive yet, not really awful right now, so it's like they could be anywhere from 7 to 11, I think, but I do want to be a little controversial and put the Charlotte Hornets as the 10 seed. I think offensively, if LaMelo is healthy and Brandon Miller is being the player that, we've seen flashes of at times, I think offensively they could be a very dangerous team. Defensively, of course, you know, their defense needs a lot of work for sure. Um, but I think they could finally be a fun, up and coming team for the first time in God knows how many years, right? So I feel pretty comfortable putting Charlotte there. And then this is where the water kind of gets muddy. Um, there are definitely the top bracket of teams in the East, and then there's kind of this soup of a bunch of teams that do I believe in them, or are they just kind of there? And I'm going to say the 76ers are actually in the 9 seed this year. I just don't believe that, a core of Joel Embiid and Paul George. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that's a core that can stay on the court for long enough to build consistency and be competitive down the stretch when it really matters. So that may be another controversial pick on this list, but for the time being, I just don't believe in the 76ers. If you've watched my playoff prediction video from last year, I did have the 76ers going quite far in the playoffs. I think I had them going all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Of course, that didn't happen. They lost first round due to injuries to key players like Joel Embiid, and I think Tobias Harris was also hurt. Not that Tobias Harris was the best player, but these are injuries to players taking significant minutes, so that is, of course, a factor, and if they were fully healthy, maybe they could have done something, but as it stands, of course, I don't believe in this team right now, and I need to be proven otherwise to change my mind on them again. And the same is true for the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, over the last couple of years have been kind of that, frisky playoff team that gets in and, maybe they win a game or two in a series, but they're not really going to be serious contenders. Of course, they traded DeJounte Murray, now that I think about it, and I don't remember exactly where he ended up, but he's no longer on the team. They have switched to a full-time Trae Young core. Obviously, they have Clint Capella too, and I'm a big fan of Clint Capella. I think he's an incredible player, but I don't think it's enough to really tango with some of these top teams. And then at number 7, I'm going to put the Cleveland Cavaliers. That one might also be shocking because I know a lot of people love Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Karis LeVert. But I think that team is just kind of, one of those ones where it's like, could they be a tier higher, right? In the 4 to 6 area? Absolutely. But as it stands currently, I think I just want them slightly out of that reach. I don't think they're a bad team by any means. I think they are by far and away better than the 3 teams below them. It's just the way things happen, whether it's tiebreakers or whatever it is. Sometimes a team ends up where you don't expect them, and I think for now, I'm fine with leaving Cleveland there, but I could be convinced to swap them with the 2 teams I'm going to put at 5 and 6, and at number 6 I have the Indiana Pacers. Of course, they had a good run last year. They made the playoffs, and of course I believe it was the Knicks that they lost to. It may have also been the Celtics. I can't quite recall, but I know they had their moments in the playoffs. I don't expect them to fall off super hard. I think they could decline a little bit from where they were last year. I don't really have anything to say why I think that. It just feels like one of those teams that maybe peaked a little earlier than they anticipated, but for now, I'm fine with Indiana being at 6, and at 5, I'm putting the Miami Heat. I think the Miami Heat are the team in the East, kind of like the Clippers or the Nuggets in the West, where it's like I think they're on a steady decline. And I think their window for competition for a title is sadly closing. But as it stands right now, I think they are definitely a playoff team. But are they a playoff team that I would trust? I don't think so. I know Jimmy Butler missed some games last year, and I think he also missed most of the playoffs too, if memory serves right, due to injury. And really, after that, I don't know that there's anyone on the Heat that I can really point to and be like, you're going to be the number one guy. Of course, Eric Spoelstra is a very good coach, but I don't know how much I trust that roster. And then at number 4, I have the Orlando Magic. Of course, the Magic have Franz Wagner. They have, what is that other guy's name that is also there and also a very prolific shooter? I can picture him in my head, but I can't think of his name for some reason, I can't think of the guy's name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Of course, they have that 1-2 punch in Orlando. Paolo Banchero. There he is. He came to my mind finally. But I think that's a very, very exciting, very energetic, very electric team with those two. And I think they might be, a year or so out from being like super, super dominant in the East, but I am fairly confident that they will be a top 4 seed. I'm very, very confident they will be a top 4 seed this year because that duo of Banchero and Wagner is just so nuts. And they're so much fun to watch too. So Orlando Magic at 4. And now, of course, we get into the top 3 teams. And I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone that these final 3 are the top 3. And we'll just go right in order. Boston Celtics at 1. Of course, they won the finals last year. A lot of people, of course, were saying, oh, they got a boost because the East is so much weaker than the West and, whatever else. But the fact of the matter is they won the finals. They should be favorites again. They're a very good team. As much as I think the league itself doesn't want Jason Tatum to be one of its faces, because Jason Tatum just is not a very marketable guy. He doesn't seem to care about any of that in the same way that Nikola Jokic doesn't seem to care about any of the fan service or the marketing or, the brand of the NBA. He just wants to play basketball. I think Jason Tatum is very similar to that. And, of course, I've never met the guy, but that's just how it feels, And there are a lot of Boston Celtics fans that I've encountered that might feel the same way, where it's like, why is the NBA just not marketing this guy, whatever? And it's like, hey, he doesn't want it. It seems that way at least. So Boston Celtics at 1, right? Shouldn't be a surprise at all to anybody. I don't think this next one should be a surprise either. I'm putting the Milwaukee Bucks at 2. I think it's very underrated how well they played down the stretch last year. Of course, they didn't make it as far as they probably wanted to in the playoffs. But they did have a good year last year. I know they added somebody this offseason that was like a big-time signing, but for some reason it's not coming to mind. But I think the Milwaukee Bucks should be up there in that conversation as one of the top teams in the East. Just because, Giannis Antetokounmpo is so good, and Damian Lillard, yes, he's not the same player he was, but I think Damian Lillard still has a couple years left in him where he can be a very, very good addition to a team, a fantastic second option. And I think this team is ready to compete right now. And then, of course, the New York Knicks, who played Boston, I believe it was all the way to 7 games. Jalen Brunson was dropping 40 bombs left and right. So, there were all kinds of highlights from that series. And I would love to see a series like that again. And I think it's quite easy to say that the Knicks are going to be a top 3 seed in the East again. Even though they did trade Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle, of course. I think they did get better getting Cat. I think it's going to possibly be a slow start for the Knicks as they adjust to having Cat instead of Julius Randle. Rebounding might take a hit, but when everything eventually coalesces, or whatever the word is, I think they will be a very dangerous team and very fun to watch. So that is my prediction for the NBA season. Let me know in the comments if you prefer this format or the other format with playoff predictor and going through every game. But I wanted to try something new this time around. Of course, I thank you very much for watching, and I will speak with you all again soon. Goodbye for now.